Hi, this is David Roskoff. This is part 2 of our .NET Core series on learning how to use .NET Core. In lesson 1 we covered basics in terms of how to configure a hello world situation using web server. And today we are going to cover a little bit more in terms of how are we going to use app settings configurations in order to get variables into a program, and a little more configuration. So first off, let's start off with our first example. So let's say that I wanted to specify the URL. I can just come here and say use URLs HTTP localhost 5001. Now I get an error. It's here. host does not contain a use URL. So here, let's go to our project.json here. Actually, let's go to the extensions. And let's add, let's see if configuration has it. So save that, I'll restore it. I'll wait for it to be restored. Back here. Oh. Change that to use URLs. Oh, that's what the problem was. That's okay, we'll need it later. Here we go. So we got use URLs. So now in my terminal here, if I went to .NET Run, .NET Run, you will see that now I'm running on port localhost 5001 as opposed to localhost 5000. Just make sure we're going to go ahead and change this to 5006, rerun it, and now you can see we're on 5006. So obviously we don't want to explicitly type, we don't want to explicitly define in our code what port we want the server listening to, right? We want to be able to do some other ways. So some other options, and I've already imported the configuration, but we're going to need to do some of the other extensions. So let's say that I wanted to do command line. I could just do Microsoft extensions dot configuration dot command line. So by doing the command line, I then just have to go into my configuration. I need to create a configuration builder. So config equals new configuration builder. Configuration builder. Oh, I gotta add using probably. Yep, add using Microsoft Extensions configuration. Then I'm going to say add command line. And command line takes one argument, which is the argument of main here, which is what's actually starting the program. And then we're going to do .build, and we're going to end it with a semicolon. Now we just need to tell it that we're going to use our configuration. So we're going to say use configuration. And we're going to pass in config. And it would be cool if I Didn't have typos over here. There we go. So there we go. So we got our configuration builder. We decided one thing. We're saying, hey, we're going to add command line. So we're going to take command line parameters. And then we have, okay, we're going to use them here. Right after launching our use Kestrel, we're going to use this configuration file. And then we're going to go back and run our hello world again. So let's try it then. So we'll go back to our terminal, shut off our current server, using Control-C. There it goes. Then I'm going to do .NET Run again. You'll see I'm back on port 5000. But now if I do .NET Run URLs, and I say that I want ports localhost 5006, voila. So now I've passed in through the command line the URL that I want to use. And you can use this for any of the configuration parameters. So URL is a configuration parameter, and so if I wanted to change, I'm trying to think of a different configuration. Probably have to look here, but there's a number of configurations you can change on the web host builder. And all you would need to do is set those parameters here. So now let's do another one. So that was one way. So we could pass things through the command line. Pretty simple. What if I wanted to use a JSON file then? Well, as you can guess, everything starts with a proper library to import. Because Microsoft's very modular, and we don't want to download everything. And so we're going to be explicitly downloading what we're going to use. In this case, we're going to use configuration.json. And we're going to add a hosting.js here. Now, hosting.js, or hosting.json. I'm going to go ahead and restore that. My hosting.json, I'm just going to have one parameter. Now, the only thing that I don't like is that the parameter that I pass in through the command line is different than the parameter I pass in through my hosting.json. My hosting.json, I use server.urls. However, in the command line, I just use URLs. A little bit inconsistent there. I hope they clean that up. But here I'm going to say localhost, and I'm going to be listening to port 5010. So there we go, listening in 5010. Now I got to tell my program to pick it up. So here in my config, I'm going to do a couple things. I'm going to set my base path. This is going to tell it where to find all my configuration files, and mine are basically at directory.use current directory. This is going to give me the current directory folder here. So if I go here and I say use system.io, I misspelled that. I'm going to try that again. Get, not use, get current directory. Great, so now I'm going to get the current directory. I'm going to set it as a base path. I'm then going to add a JSON file. And in here, I'm going to tell it hosting.json. So now what I've done is I've moved my parameters into a hosting.json file. It's called the server.urls. I specified the port I'm listening to. I went ahead and added the base path to where to look for my configuration files. And I've also told it what the name of the file is. Now when it goes to bring this in, it's going to go ahead and set that parameter. Let's go ahead and show that. So now if I just do .NET Run, I'm now on localhost 510. And just make sure you guys don't think there's any smoke and mirrors. I'm going to go here, localhost 510. Sure enough, there's my Hello World application. So working the same way as it did. Okay, so we went ahead and brought in a JSON file. We went ahead and set the path, we have a command line argument. What if I wanted to bring in an app settings folder? So the reason why there's two folders, or two files. So there's hosting.json, which is more of your core kind of root level configurations, things like configuring a server. And then you're going to have things like JSON, or you're going to have things that you're just going to need to maybe initialize services or contexts. And so what we're going to want to do there is we're going to want to add a application settings. We're not going to keep them separate. And the reason why is, even though right now they're loading in the same area or in the same file, the truth of the fact is that application settings will most likely be the one that you use when you create a startup.cs class, which we'll cover in next week's lesson. Whereas the appsettings.js file or hosting.json file will likely be called here in program.cs. And so because they're going to be called in different areas, you really need two different configuration files in order to load this. So appsettings.json, we're going to keep our server logic different from our application logic. So appsettings.json. So in our appsettings.json, we're going to go ahead and just create a family. And this family is going to have a dad. And we're going to call him Homer. Okay, and it's going to have a mom. And we're going to call her Marge. Okay, so they're family, dad, mom. Now, how do I access the Homer parameter or the Marge parameter? So here, now that I have a config file, and now that I've loaded the appsettings.json file that I just created, I can create I can just access it right here. I should be able to say config, and I should be able to just pass in the parameters. So if I've said family, and then the child is separated by a colon, and I said dad, and I said var dad equals that, put a semicolon there, and now if I replace person with, or if I say his father is the variable dad. Let's see what happens. So now I'm going to restart my server. We're listening port 510. Hello world David, which is a parameter we got from here. His father is Homer, which is a parameter we got from the config file. And so that's really the easiest way to set the config. So the config file is really just going to be the path, and this path is just going to be, what are the parent members, what are the children member, and then we're going to go ahead and give you the variable that's related to the parents. So again, if we look here, application.json said, hey, okay, I'm going to go to family, I'm going to go to dad, I'm going to get Homer. If I wanted to do the mom, I could just simply do that. Restart it. And now it says David father is Marge. Pretty simple, huh? So change that back because I want my program to make sense. Last thing we're going to cover here is, you'll notice this hosting environment here says production. Now, there is a number of ways to set that hosting environment. One way is in PowerShell. I can do environment. I can explicitly define it. I can say environment, and it's this longest variable ever, ASP.NET Core environment. Okay, and I just say equals development, or development. So now, if I do that, Hopefully I got the right syntax. I don't know that I do. Let me make sure I have that right here. Oh yes, I see it now. Sorry, $ environment ASP net core environment equals development. Now what this is going to do is it's going to set these the environment variable to ASP.NET Core environment to development. Sorry, it's going to set that variable to development, and it's going to persist for the life of this PowerShell session that we have here. So if I hit enter here, it's going ahead and set it. Now if I do .NET run, you can see now it says development. Now if I were to add new session and you'll notice that I'm on a different PowerShell session here. Let's kill my last one. Assuming it doesn't freeze on us here. So you'll notice it's different. So if I do .NET run here, you'll notice that it will actually say production, because the environment was set on the last one. If I kill this session, you'll notice here that it still says development. So that kind of covers environment settings. The other ways to set environments is you can set them on the debugger himself. So here, under the debugger, if I run this, you're going to notice that the output is going to say, as soon as it runs, it's going to first compile. And it's going to say, oh, now we're listening on localhost 510. You'll notice that it says host environment production. If in here I went and added a environment, and that's going to have an object called ASP.NET Core. Environment development. Great. Looks like I have a few errors there. That'd be great if I didn't shut. There we go. One too many of those. Doesn't like that. Creating an object, great. And let's format that out. Put that in the right place. Oh, no, I have that in the wrong spot here. Sorry. This guy doesn't go there. It actually goes under configuration. Like so. And I need a comma here. There we go. Format him. Take off my extra set in this array. There. So now I've told my launch.json, which is basically controlling how I'm launching in debug, that when I do launch, I want to use this environment variable. So now, if I click play, you can see I'm now in development. Now, there is one more way that we can do this. If I was to bring up my system environment variables, Oh, I guess real quick, there is, let's go over, so I did show you the PowerShell way of setting the environment variable, but if you're on a Mac or if you are on a Linux machine, there are different ways. So if I was doing it in Bash, I'd do export ASP.NET Core equals development. This will work for your Mac terminals. You can also do PowerShell, as we were showing before. And if you're just doing command line, it's set x, ASP.NET Core environment, development. So again, different ways of setting the exact same environment variable. And that is here in the documentation for working with multiple environments. Just if you were to, if you're looking for something to Google, just either if you just Google this, it'll take you straight to this documentation. All right. Now, one more way to set the environment variable, and I probably almost prefer this the most, which is you can actually set it on your system itself. So if you look for system environment variables, and I go to environment variables, you see this here. I can actually say new, and I can say ASP.NET Core environment, and I can say I'm staging. Okay. So now, what you'll notice, staging was neither production or development. And so now if I do .NET, not in the console window, here if I do .NET run, you're going to notice I'm in development mode here. But let's do another one. A new terminal window where I haven't previously set the PowerShell environment variable. And now, get an error. Did I not shut the other one off? No. Can't run the program twice. There we go. So here we go. And as you can see, it says production, which isn't right. Let me just double check my environment variable again. ASP.NET Core staging environment. Let's make sure I spelled it correctly. Environment does look right. It should be picking that up. Well, life from a life of me cannot figure out why that isn't working. I have seen this work and I've used it before. Maybe it'll work for you, but it is, you just set the variable ASP.NET Core environment, you set your value to staging, or development, or production, and it will set it for the entire machine. So every time you go to run any .NET project, it will set that. Now there are some precedents in terms of when it takes that variable versus your debug variable versus your command line variable, and so you'll have to take that into consideration. So yeah, so that concludes our lesson for today. Next week we're going to use environment variables in order to access specific config files. And we'll actually go through how to create a startup.cs file and how we configure that as well. So again, thanks for your time, and I hope this was educational for you. See you next time.